Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our MAG Management Meeting. We're going to now call the meeting to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows for members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you'd like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a request to speak card located on the information table in the hallway and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchase a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assist devices are available from MAG staff. We'll now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members. MAG staff will do the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Management Committee. I will go down the list of members alphabetically. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Patrick Banger. Jeffrey Barton. Jean Blackman.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Brady.
Here.
Thank you. Andrew Ching.
Here.
Thank you. Ron Corbin.
Here.
Ron Corbin.
Here.
Thank you. Dan Cotterman.
Here.
Thank you. Henry Darwin.
Present.
Thank you. Philip Dorchester. Crystal Dykes.
Present.
Thank you. Carrie Dyrick.
Here.
Thank you. Stephen Erno.
Here.
Thank you. Bruce Gardner.
Here.
Thank you. Rachel Goodwin.
Present.
Thank you. Rick Horst. Rosa Inchowski.
Present.
Thank you. Suzanne Jones.
Present.
Thank you. Jeff Kulaga. Leo Liu. Russ Martin.
Here.
Thank you. Reyes Medrano.
Here.
Thank you. Jessica Mefford Miller.
Present.
Thank you. Brian Myers. Gary Neese. Shahid Abbas as proxy for Kevin Phelps.
Present.
Thank you. Jen Pekorski. Bryant Powell.
Here.
Thank you. Andy Granger as proxy for Wynette Reed.
Here.
Thank you. Bill Murphy as proxy for Jim Thompson. Mark Sanders as proxy for Director Toth.
Here.
Thank you. Catherine Valenzuela. Matthew Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Bob Wingenroth.
Here.
Thank you. Joshua Wright.
Here.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed?
Andrea, this is Bill Murphy. I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item is call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience. So I have received 4 requests. We'll ask each speaker to limit their comments to 3 minutes each. And we'll just call them in the order in which I have them. The first one I have is Mary Ann Johnson. If you'll please come forward.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mary Ann Johnston, and I'd like to say as a regional planning agency, I wanted to express an opinion to all of you that is underrepresented. And that's the idea that sprawl is actually good. Both my husband and I are born and raised here in Maricopa County, 60 plus years, have not lived in Arizona all our lives. We have lived elsewhere, but have come back to the Valley and seen just a major sprawl. As we all know, living in the Southwest, we spread out, we don't go up. So many people have chosen communities that offer them space rather than communities that reflect the features of a 15-minute city urban design. Prior to the invention of, obviously, the private vehicle, most people lived in dense cities that clustered around factories and industry. This was not by choice, but a necessity driven by limited mobility. The invention of the automobile directly shaped our communities, land use patterns, created suburban urban sprawl, and provided alternatives to the more restrictive urban cores of the past. Today, we live in an amazingly built environment where people have immense opportunity and choice in where they live, where they work, where they recreate and explore. Many of your cities are pursuing transportation master plans and climate action plans that say we need to be people-centric, not car-centric. This is a sneaky way of trying to confuse people into thinking the interest of people in cars are at odds. But that's ridiculous. We know that. It's planners who resent the cars, not most people. After all, cars serve people. Sprawling communities popped up and flourished exactly because the personal car enabled that preference for millions of people for the first time in history. We value our space, we value our flexibility, we value our freedom. Personal vehicles are essential tools for people to access all these values. This idea of road diets or 15-minute cities is nothing more than the agenda of the members of the World Economic Forum who are forcing forced behavior to place restrictions on the lives of common citizens. Does that give me a little more time? Okay, there we go. So as a region and as individual cities, I would encourage you all to reject manufactured 15-minute cities. And instead, let's preserve the open space, sprawling communities that people have chosen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we'll invite Donnie Bond to come forward.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you again today. I am a resident of Maricopa County, and I'm concerned about our communities adopting these 15-minute city goals in so-called climate action plans. Though 15-minute cities are sold as providing more choice and access by purporting giving people additional options, such as walking and biking, it is a ruse that always requires the diminishment of roads and comes at the expense of drivers. Not to mention the fact that not everybody has the ability to walk and drive. Paris was the first place to fully implement the ID in 2020 during the COVID lockdowns. Despite the upheaval of the city's infrastructure, including converting one of the most heavily used expressways in Paris into one big sidewalk, they failed in their attempt to force Parisians to abandon their vehicles. Instead, the fewer roads are now available and choked with congestion as residents try to escape the city to access their jobs. This induced gridlock is not a problem for 15-minute city proponents. Their solution is to quit your job, find one that is on a public transit route or within walking distance, which is not always feasible, as I'm sure that you know, or just work from home, which not everybody can do either. It helps that COVID lockdowns socialize these behaviors. In fact, COVID was an unmissable opportunity to accelerate the shift to urban planning approaches, such as the 15-minute city, according to the C4 cities. Ultimately, 15-minute cities are incompatible with a society organized around responding to individual choice and preference. It is the personal vehicle and the corresponding sprawl that provides people with the mobility freedom to access the schools, healthcare facilities, and churches of their choice.
1 minute.
People think that their privacy is being invaded. We feel that's what we feel. Our privacy is being invaded by devices being used under these smart city rules and how government will use the data. We are fearful about that and would like you to keep that in consideration. Thank you.
Our next speaker, will invite Karen Guthrie. Come forward, please. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm also from Maricopa County, and I'm against the 15-minute city. I believe that places in the world, as well as the United States, are converting their communities into 15-minute cities, and I think it's a mistake to do so here. If anyone would benefit from the 15-minute city, it's the younger, single, fit population. For most people in Arizona, this wouldn't be a benefit, but rather a detriment. Why? Because Arizona has a huge population of vulnerable individuals, such as the elderly, many with serious health conditions, disabled children, and pregnant women. These people simply cannot walk or bike, as you suggest. Fixed transit routes provide little flexibility or safety to accommodate such individuals. And in addition, fixed transit routes are often riddled with crime, assaults, and vagrants, posing a serious danger to these travelers who are defenseless. Places such as Tucson and Tempe have committed to orienting their land use around 15-minute cities concepts in their climate action plans. Not only is it inconvenient to walk or bike in these cities, it can be fatal. It should be obvious that in Arizona, which can be unbearably and dangerously hot for many months, it is inane to make people walk or bike to get around. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker for Call the Audience will be Hans B.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. May I introduce myself? I'm Hans Bogensberger, and I am a retired nuclear physicist with a PhD. I worked in research of nuclear fission, fusion, and solar, and I gave scientific papers on 3 continents and 2 languages. Now I'm come to the discussion about green energy. I looked in this matter very deep. We were building in my company. We were building solar panels, but the disadvantage is very high because it's kind of complicated production and they are very sensitive and the efficiency is not very high. So the Germans made a bad mistake. When I was there in Germany and left in 2002, the electricity price was 11 cents per cent per kilowatt. Last year, it was 86 per kilowatt hour. And they dismounted all their nuclear power. We had 46 gigawatt and about 1.5 gigawatt in solar, and then and now they have 1.5 gigawatt in nuclear and 35 gigawatt in solar, and that thing will collapse because you cannot run a high industrialized country with solar energy. So it is, and coming to the climate change. The climate changed with the world since 2,500 years. But what they mean is man-made climate change. But here's something. The Swiss scientists found out that the Eiger Nord slope, that is a very famous mountain where the climber go up, had been carved out with the glacier 12,000 to 13 years ago. And the ice there was 3,800 meters above sea level. So Switzerland, 13,000 years ago, was a sea of ice. Now I'm asking you, why is Switzerland still not in ice? Because it got warmer. And at that time, there were no, Switzerland maybe had about 3,000 Stone Age people. So the humanity didn't even exist then. So that is clear. We are not big enough and powerful enough to change the climate. That is, the nature was doing it, the sun.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. All right, that's all the ones that I have available or that have been handed to me. So thank you for those comments. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Staff have received any online written comments for call to the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received 16 written comments for call to the audience, which have been provided to the members in advance for consideration and will be included in the formal minutes of the meeting.
Thank you. All right, we'll now proceed to item number 4, which is the MAG Executive Director, Ed Zirkle, will provide a report. Ed?
Thank you, Chairman Brady. First of all, on behalf of MAG staff, we welcome Rosa Inchausti to her first MAG meeting as the City Manager of Tempe. Congratulations, Rosa. Glad you're joining us.
Thank you.
Couple things. First of all, Prop 400, as we all know, the extension was passed through the legislature, signed by the governor. I just want to express appreciation to you all for the work that but a lot of your time, your staff put into working to educate folks and communicate about the importance of Prop 400 and the extension there. So thank you to all cities, all agency members, and the work you've done. We will hear more about the issue of homelessness today, but just wanted to point out some work that's being done through the coordinative efforts of Maricopa Association of Governments. Individual cities and individual agencies put together the places where those experiencing homelessness can get relief from the heat, either through water or shelter. But MAG is serving as the coordinator across city boundaries so that there is one place to find where can you go if you live in Maricopa County that might be near you, convenient to you, where you can volunteer, where you can donate, or where you can access these services. Since May 1st, and primarily since June 30th, when the temperatures accelerated, there have been hundreds of stories on media, and many outlets have come to the Maricopa Association of Government staff, as well as to your individual cities. Thought it was notable that the NBC Nightly News called MAG's Heat Relief Network one of the most sophisticated networks of cooling sites in the country. Next slide, please. The role of MAG in the network is to work with your staff to coordinate across city boundaries so that there's information available, as I said, publicly. We do not receive funding for this. This is work that our staff have taken on to fill this need that was expressed to us by our member agencies. Just to highlight, cooling centers, respite centers, hydration stations, and donation sites. Cooling centers are daytime. Respite centers are nighttime. Hydration stations are places for water. And of course, where can you drop off water? As we've worked this summer, what we've noted is there is a stronger demand for the respite centers. That's the 24-hour overnight cooling. And so one of the things our staff is working on with yours is to identify opportunities for more respite centers. That's a big ask because most places are not staffed 24/7 to do that. So where do the resources come from for that staffing? But we're going to work on that as soon as the heat breaks and we have a chance to catch our breath over the winter. So we'll continue to focus on that. I do want to say a special shout out to Cleo Warner, who appeared on Arizona Horizon to talk about this. And so our staff have had some good opportunities to communicate. Next slide, please. One of the things we do at MAG is we provide a place for convening of some of our partners. The Federal Railroad Administration asked for a site, one of several regions where the Federal Railroad Administration is working on plans for intercity rail, that is Amtrak service between regions. This is not internal transit. And so the FRA did meet here at MAG. The resumption of Amtrak service to Phoenix, to the region, is an important goal of Amtrak. And we provided a space for them to meet and to do that. And also joined by folks from the governor's office and from our other regional metropolitan planning organizations throughout the Western United States. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ed. Our next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Items 5A through 5L are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the committee have a question or request a presentation on any of these items? Prior to the approval of the consent agenda, we do have some individuals from the public who wish to comment on the items on the agenda. So I have received 3 cards. And so again, we'll just go in order. I have them here in front of me. So we'll invite Dick Bond to come forward.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me and us here today. I want to urge this body to please not pursue net zero goals. Most of us take our energy abundance for granted. To this day, there are 3 billion people that live in this world on less electricity than it takes to run a refrigerator. And many are generating their heat and their energy from burning wood and dung. The forced transition of energy production to meet these net zero goals will thrust us into this energy poverty as well. Energy abundance means cleaner homes, more productivity, increased food production, and greater resilience to climate change. That's why China is permitting 2 new coal-burning plants every week. They know having reliable energy like coal will make them more resilient to a changing climate. The path to energy poverty, however, looks like Germany, where high costs for electricity caused by lower supply as a result of net zero policies have forced people to chop down trees and burn their furniture last winter to stay warm because they can't afford to run their heaters. Let's support the welfare and the well-being of people by ensuring we can continue to provide abundant energy. And that means saying no to net zero alarmism. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll invite April Smith to come forward.
Yes, members of the MAG Management Committee, I want to urge you to not adopt any climate goals like net zero by 2050. I'm concerned because I see you are getting money from the feds to do a climate plan. But I think these popular net zero goals totally ignore the benefits of fossil fuels, and that is a travesty. The discovery that fossil fuels, an abundant supply of raw material, can be turned into energy set up an unparalleled advancement in human flourishing, intentionally ignored by the net zero alarmists. And they are the immense benefits this previously unknown and untapped source of power provides are ignored by the alarmists. The industrialization enabled by fossil fuel energy has lifted billions out of energy poverty, increased life expectancy, created food abundance, and provides access to more clean water than ever before. The truth is that fossil fuels have made every individual more productive. They continue to make us resilient to weather and climate, and they are the only source of affordable, reliable, and abundant energy. Those who oppose fossil fuels never even mention these tremendous benefits. And I think it's important for you to hear and consider them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we'll invite Barbara Jennings to come forward.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to speak. I feel like in this time of very high inflation that all America is experiencing, it is detrimental that our governances be good stewards of our tax money, which is why I'm going to want to discourage this body from wasting $1 million for a consultant to generate a flawed climate action plan that is likely to look like all the others passed by cities like Mesa, Phoenix, and Tucson. This war on fossil fuels is folly, and it will come at the cost of reliable, abundant, and affordable energy, as well as Arizona's quality of living. Coal and natural gas are the most cost-effective sources of energy. Solar and wind are not affordable, which is why they require trillion-dollar tax credits and incentives from Congress to be competitive. As recently as 2021, the Arizona Corporation Commission released a study that showed the pursuit of net zero by 2050 would cost ratepayers $6 million. $6 million in this time of inflation that we do not see any end to. The city of Phoenix recognized this in its 2021 climate action plan, acknowledging their net zero aspirations for residents would cost the average ratepayer at least $720 a year. And in practice, our neighbor California provides a clear case study on the unaffordability of renewables. Their residents pay 66% more for electricity than the rest of the country. And during the past 2 summers, while experiencing rolling blackouts, faced double-digit spikes in rates. I don't want that for residents here in Maricopa County, for myself, for my family, my neighbors. Nobody should want that for anybody living in our state. And watching California, people are fleeing California. And one of the reasons is the cost of living and the fact that they don't have reliable energy. And listening to Senator Kennedy with the experts on fossil fuel, they can't even give us a cost benefit ratio. All this money we're going to put into all these green energy, what is that going to give us back? They can't even tell us how much it's going to bring down our temperatures or the positive effects that it may have on our country. So I just hope that you really think about the money that you're spending. This is taxpayers' money and it should benefit all of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, have we received any online written comments for the consent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received 11 written comments for the consent agenda, which have been provided to the members in advance of the meeting for consideration, will be included in the formal minutes of the meeting.
Thank you. I apologize. I didn't mean to expand the agenda. The consent items will go from 5A to 5I, not L. So just make sure everybody. All right. Is there a motion to approve consent items 5A? So moved. 5I. We have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a second. We have a motion and a second. Do you have the names? Did you get the name, staff? Did you hear who those were? Reyes Medrano.
If you could repeat them, please.
Yeah, it was Reyes, right? Reyes, and Andrew Ching was second. What was the
Thank you,
second?
Mr. Chair.
Sorry. Okay. We'll have those participating in the meeting online now. Sorry, let me read that again. We will have those participating in the meeting online now take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We'll need to see the faces of everyone to participate in the voice vote. This is to speed up the voting process. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their camera, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual participants who did not turn on their camera. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras are not on. So we just want to see your live smiling faces. All right. So can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online whose faces we can see? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Though, those opposed, say nay. All right, so staff, can you take a roll call of members participating virtually who did not show their smiley faces on the camera?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, when I call your name, please unmute and indicate how you vote. Jean Blackman,
Yes.
thank you. Andy Granger,
Yes.
thank you. Suzanne Jones. Russ Martin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Henry Darwin.
Yes.
Thank you. Suzanne Jones. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes.
Thank you very much. All right, so that takes care of consent. We'll now proceed to item number 6. These are items to be heard. This is item 6 is moving forward the work of addressing homelessness. Item 6 will be presented by MAG Regional Homelessness Program Manager Katie Gentry. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Katie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for this opportunity to continue to provide an overview of the work to address homelessness. We've continued to work collaboratively with all of your staff to move this work forward and really excited to continue to offer updates to you on a quarterly basis. Next slide. The purpose of this presentation is to give an overview of all the work. I'm going to start with continuum of care efforts and then move to Pathways Home and then talk about some next steps. Next slide. I'll begin with continuum of care efforts. Next slide. Wanted to let you know about our annual notice of funding opportunity. It was released. This is an annual application that we complete. It was released by the Department of Housing and Urban Development on July 5th. Our local application was due yesterday, and we have received numerous applications. I'm really excited to start reviewing those with our rank and review committee over the next coming weeks, and then our full application is due September 28th. The focus of this is over $35.3 million that helps to address homelessness locally and results in over 2,000 people being housed each year. Next slide. I want to hand it over to my colleague Daniel Davis, who is with Home Inc. to provide an overview of Threshold before I give you a complete overview of the other steps of Pathways Home. Next slide.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for having me. My name is Daniel Davis. I'm the Director of Landlord Relations at Home Inc., which is the administrator of the service known as Threshold. I remember many of you from about 1.5 years ago when we first launched, and we said, hey, we want to try something really crazy and start recruiting more units to work with our vouchers that are getting people off the streets. And this is the report out of that effort. First off, just a brief reminder, Threshold is Maricopa County's centralized landlord liaison service for all landlords throughout the whole county. It serves specifically rental assistance programs for the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care. And then it's also integrated into the regional strategy to end homelessness. I believe it's 0.5, a centralized strategic outreach service. So now that we have 1 year under our belts, or a little over a year, we wanted to take a really deep dive into the impact, where the money went, how were we successful, but then also take a look back on how homelessness has been impacted by the general housing market, and then how we did compared to those previous efforts. As you can see, the three and a half years before Threshold launched, the housing market directly causes effectively or contributes directly to homelessness, but also the amount of or the impact and success that our solutions have. So the tighter the rental market gets, the harder it is to find housing for everybody. People get displaced, and then it's really hard to find new housing when you're on the streets. I'm not saying we're some magic bullet, but showing that the housing market actually tightened more significantly right after our launch, and we still saw an exponential increase in move-ins, just shows that, prior we had been trying to convince all landlords to work with the homeless system, but we had only asked a few people. Now we've been able to saturate the entire market and get more partners on board. So this has led to historic levels of move-ins, specifically with permanent supportive housing programs that work with people with severe mental illnesses. We've been able to talk to tons of new partners who have never heard of us. And that's been the impact so far. We also realized that historically, the homeless system has been dependent on the same existing partners. So you think if somebody gets evicted, goes on the streets, they get a voucher, they're probably going to go back to the same property or a similar property that their family members or someone in the same socioeconomic class lives in. Well, year over year, we've kind of been burning those bridges by not taking care of those relationships with those property owners and managers. And it's mainly been due to limited funds. You could see again, the previous 3.5 years leading up to our launch, move-ins have been down, correlating directly to the amount of move-ins we had at existing partnerships. And the trend was very likely to continue. The first half of 2022, especially, we had a lot of the same partners starting to drop off. We also had the historic housing market issues that we've had, literally the worst in the nation for half a year there. And then we had real estate investment trusts buying a lot of property from primarily out of state and implementing general no voucher policies. And again, especially during the eviction moratorium, when all the move outs halted, so did the move ins. The homeless system, again, has been generally dependent on the same units, the same properties. By focusing on our first step, which was to stop the bleeding, start to maintain and rebuild some of those relationships that have been broken in the past, especially from egregious levels of damages or arrears from tenants, we were able to increase move-ins actually to existing partners. And then we started to work at the executive level. We have an advisory council that's co-owned by the Arizona Multi-Housing Association. And a lot of their members had never heard of the homeless voucher system and decided to step in and step up. And that actually led to also the following year, so 2023, we've had a lot of peer level referrals. That's been the primary mechanism of our success this year. Whereas last year it was focusing on executives and then regionals and recruiting entire companies. And now they're all effectively inviting their friends. And so, in this graph, the yellow is the move-in trend line. So some big highlights. We are over utilization actually for the funding that we have for vouchers in our system, which hasn't happened in quite a long time. This means that all the, especially permanent supportive housing, but also rapid rehousing, all the grant dollars that go into our nonprofits and into our clinics, we actually have been overshot because we were able to increase the success rate of people leasing up. By increasing the amount of units, we've been able to also increase access to quality housing and also lowering the barriers that people have to get into housing. We've enabled 1,250 new move-ins. And then also, I used to work at UMOM New Day Centers. I was the director of housing there. And so I know how important this stat is as well, where nearly 8,000 days and nights off the streets or out of the back of cars or out of shelter have been saved by reducing the time it takes to lease up. And I know the operating costs are about, back of napkin math here, but like $670,000 have been saved in operational costs by getting these people out of shelters and into their own housing. I also want to give some context for the people who are experiencing homelessness. We had 3 focus groups. before we launched, and the feedback was pretty clear. People want more options, better quality options, and they want to be closer to their support system for long-term success. You think of, my mother, my in-laws watch my kids sometimes whenever I run into issues. They would like the same benefits instead of living in Glendale if their parents live in Queen Creek. This is a quote from one of the focus groups. Please just make it easier for me to find myself housing. And that's been part of the success. You can go to thresholdaz.com, check out our dashboards, and actually see how many tenants found their own housing using our incentives, also the tenants to find their own homes. And because of that focused effort, we've been able to recruit over 1,000 new We've been able to expand our geographic diversity from 5 cities to 16, from 74 zip codes to 113, and from 92 available units at any time to over 1,100 units. And what that number means is we have an internet-based listing service called Padmission, where all of our landlords log in and put their vacancies. And 3 years ago, when we first surveyed the community, we had about 92 units that were available, and we had 700 people with vouchers searching. And now we have 1,100 available units, and we have less than 300 voucher holders searching. And so finally, part of this whole system has been incentives. And this is especially for transparency. You can go again to our dashboards and check out how we've spent all the money. But I want to highlight to you the top one where we've been able to reduce screening criteria for tenants. This has been a huge aspect of bottlenecking the homeless system. If you ask any provider, people with evictions or criminal history or insufficient income, that's been the primary barrier. And what we do is we acknowledge that this is a business decision from the landlord, that it's risk mitigation on their behalf, on their, for their business model. And we want to compensate them for that risk and acknowledge that they are taking on risk. We also pay just to try us out, try out the homeless system, get to know us, or to reduce the rent down to the max allowable payment standards that we have, which is set by HUD. Thank you again for your time. Please take a look through that booklet, and yeah, you can shoot me any questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I want to highlight some other action steps from Pathways Home. Letters of commitment, over $270 million in cash match this year, 17.9 million in kind, and 97 million in other cash match. This is direct from letters of commitment from each of your cities that you all signed. Part of that is how we funded Threshold on an ongoing basis, and really, really important as I go through these next few slides. I unfortunately have to also tell you the bleak news. We, over the last year in fiscal year 22-23, we had 19 people newly experiencing homelessness for every 10 people finding housing, which means we do not have enough housing available and affordable in our region to move people into. And so we are having more people experiencing homelessness, both our rents continuing to increase 68% in the last 5 years. We don't have enough housing resources in our community. And so we need to be pouring more into that housing resource side of our system to be able to move people through our system faster to get them back into housing.
I think one other thing I'd add on this, Katie and I talked about it, is if we had done nothing, it would be 29 people experiencing homelessness instead of 19, right? So it's frustrating to see the numbers go up. But if we did nothing, if we threw in the towel, the numbers would be even greater. So that's kind of hard to balance, but I just wanted to point that piece out as well.
Thanks, Ed, and highlighting that. I want to highlight all of the work that you all are doing. When we started this plan 2 years ago, we had a goal of 770 permanent or temporary units and 1,225 permanent units. As I mentioned, homelessness is continuing to increase, but we are pouring a lot of funding into that temporary housing side. And so we've reduced that number. We only need 431 temporary units at any given time because of how many new shelters we've created over the last year and really poured funding into that since COVID began. But that permanent housing number continues to increase because we're responding to the immediate crisis. We're not necessarily continuing to pour that into housing, and we're hitting a bottleneck in our shelters of nowhere to go go after. So really working with all of our shelters to be increasing employment and working with clients to get on their own feet and be able to move into rents. But with those rents being so expensive, it's really challenging to continue to move forward and not hit that bottleneck. I also want to highlight the work of the USICH Technical Assistance. This was an initiative in partnership with the White House, Mayor Gallego, Mayor Giles, the supervisors, as well as MAG has signed on to this. It's a federal official at the local level for the next 2 years. Really, the goal of that is to connect us the local official with a network of federal teams. Our focus is these 6 bullets, really looking at encampments and how we're addressing encampments as a region, shelter coordination specifically on our single side, regulatory relief, especially as ARPA is coming to an end. How do we increase funding? As we know, this is an ongoing challenge, especially with that cliff coming. Coordination with our tribal partners, as well as a public health response, and how do we better integrate public health resources with our homelessness response?
And Katie, USICH stands for?
Thank you. U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness is our federal body that addresses the 19 different federal agencies that address homelessness across the federal agencies.
And I think it's important. This is what you all in your cities, your agent, this is what you're facing, right? This is, so bringing this technical resource to you and your staff is really the role that Katie's filling here.
And Katie, they're only doing this in like, is it 6?
Yep, we are one of 6 cities that were chosen: Phoenix, Dallas, Seattle, Chicago, Los Angeles, and the state of California. Just to throw a wrench in that one. But this is something we're really working with the jurisdiction committee and all of your staff to see how you all can better leverage this. We have Kent is here this week on site. So if you all are interested in meeting with him or meeting with us, feel free to reach out to me. Next steps, we are going to continue to work through this technical assistance and really try to leverage it as much as possible over the next 2 years, and then continue implementing the different steps of the plan, including what is underway currently in phase 2 as we start to finish some of those action plan steps, that we move into those completed steps next. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Chair Brady, and answer any questions for Daniel or myself.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Katie. Do any members have any questions or comments? Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Chris, and members of the committee. Great presentation. And I can remember a few years back when we were working on this as a region, there was a lawsuit going on in Orange County. At the time when things get so bad, eventually what happened over there was they started suing each other's and as cities and towns. And Santa Ana, which is the oldest city there and place where predominance of the homeless were collecting there, Santa Ana sued the county. But what I do know is if we want to do something, don't do that. Let's work together. You know, if anybody has an idea on how we can help our fellow human beings and our fellow people, let's do it. And I think that's what this organization has been trying to work on for the last few years. You know, we've made a pact out in the East Valley. Like, hey, let's work together as we know that the homeless don't know exactly where the stoplights in cities end. In Apache Junction, we have open space, but we also have a little bit lower cost of housing, entry level to housing, which is great, but we're way far away from the ability to have some great jobs or, some other systems that are there. And I just want to make a comment that I think it's good that we avoid the models that we see in California and others that have the whole state have issues, and that we keep working together versus against each other.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? Anyone online? All right. Thank you, Katie, Daniel. Thank you very much. All right, now we'll proceed to item number 7, which is a updated process to collect in-kind contributions. MAG Deputy Executive Director Amy St. Peter will present item number 7. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Amy.
Mr. Chair, if I could I want to say, first of all, thank you to Amy on this item. She's done a lot of work on this with your staff. This is one of those things that we do at MAG year after year after year. And with new people, we're not always aware of some of the processes going on. This is an important one that Amy's going to describe to you. And she has worked closely with your staff. We thought it was important at the management committee level to bring this forward, just so we're aware of how this in-kind process works as we move forward. So Amy, thank you for your work and take it away.
Thank you very much, Ed. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for this opportunity to share with you and to provide an update on the process that we use to collect information about your in-kind contributions. And just to level set, the in-kind contributions are staff time as other resources that you spend on MAG-related work. And so examples of this could be including meetings just like this, time spent on MAG projects, and participating in annual events such as a point in time. So it's not funding that's given or that's transferred, it's funding that's already being spent internally and in your support of regional planning that's undertaken through MAG. A number of our federal grants do require a cash match or in-kind contribution. So each time we invoice ADOT, we need to report on how much we've been able to collect, either in cash or through those in-kind contributions. The more in-kind contribution information we can collect, the less we have to spend our cash match, and the more that we can spend those same funds in other areas that serve all of our member agencies. So just as a reference point for FY23, we needed to collect $1.4 million in in-kind contributions. We've been able to collect already the vast majority of this thanks to the partnership that we have with you, with your staff. We understand that you're very busy and this is kind of extra time to be able to provide this information. It is detailed information, but it really does help us to be good fiscal stewards and to stretch out our dollars that we have available for regional planning. We appreciate the time that you spent with us. Also back in June, we convened a meeting of you, your staff, to talk about how can we make this process work really efficiently for you. We understand that your time is limited and we want to make sure that we're making good use of your time as well as all of our resources. And so we've received feedback on those enhancements both before and after that meeting. We've taken all of that feedback into consideration and we're making a number of process improvements in order to use our time and resources wisely. So example of these process improvements include things like changing the Excel spreadsheet that's used to collect this information to streamline it for you to make it easier to use. We're also going to be centralizing information such as that spreadsheet, other training materials, other resources about in-kind contributions, and we're centralizing those on a shared drive that will be available to all of our member agencies. Each month, we'll be providing a list of all of the committee meetings that took place during that month, as well as with the people who attended them, so you know which staff to follow up with in order to collect that information. As your staff are appointed to our committees, we'll be letting them know right away that their time spent with that committee can count as an in-kind contribution, and to be sure to coordinate with your internal staff on that. And also based on feedback, we can also begin collecting this information on a monthly basis and then providing quarterly reports and an annual presentation. So as partners, we can really spend some time each year talking about what's working and what can we do to enhance this process to make it even easier for you. There are a number of agencies already doing this work extremely well. From what we're hearing, it really helps to have that central point of contact with express support from leadership to emphasize with your staff how important this activity is. Some have even created their own reporting tools on shared drives, and that seems to be helping at the agency level. That consistent attention helps to keep this on our radar. And turnover, as Ed mentioned, can be a challenge. And so we're making an effort to provide more onboarding materials that you can use with your staff to help them to understand this process. Any additional information that you have on in-kind contributions for fiscal year 2023, if you could please get that to us by the end of August, and then we can apply it to that. And we really look forward to continuing to partnering with you closely and to implementing any other enhancements that you might request or to be able to answer your questions. So please feel free to reach out at any time. We'd love to continue this dialogue with you. And again, thank you so much for your attention to this and to your staff. It's really helping us to spend our limited dollars in the best way possible. Thank you very much for your time today. This is on the agenda for information and discussion.
Thank you, Amy. It's very important. I appreciate you bringing that forward. Any questions, comments for Amy? Anybody virtually? All right, Amy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll proceed to item number 8, legislative update. Who is this, Ed?
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just very briefly, everyone's been inundated in Prop 400 extension news. And so I know you're all aware that that was successfully passed through the legislature on a bipartisan vote and signed by Governor Hobbs into law. It takes effect on October the 30th, as do all other session law that has to wait the 90 days. So that's good news for the planning process that we completed. And now we'll kick off a whole new set of work as we look towards 2025 into early 2026, when the extension would take effect should the voters of Maricopa County pass that bill. And that's really what's happening in the next phase. So you'll see more items about aligning the plan to the legislation that'll come to you this fall, and the staff will continue to be working as we see Prop 400 wind down and heading towards the beginning of Prop 400 extension on January 1, 2026, with as little rub between the two, again, provided the voters of Maricopa County are to pass this in 2024. Again, I want to thank you and all your staff for the work you did. It was a tough couple of years to get through the ups and downs of the legislative process, but ultimately we felt really good about being able to communicate and educate. The process that you followed over the last 5 years to come up with the plan was really important. The fact that it did not appear out of thin air from MAG or somewhere, but it came out of what each of you said was important to your communities through the voice of your mayors and your leaders. That's what the plan reflected. The plan reflected each individual of the 32 member agencies of MAG together through the elected leadership, saying this is what a plan needs to look like to serve all of Maricopa County. And that's ultimately what prevailed in the legislature, particularly rural legislators who understood that having a plan in Maricopa County to spend Maricopa County dollars on transportation frees the limited resources that the state has to go to the rural areas of the state. That was really an important message taken to heart by many of our rural legislators who are not from Maricopa County, but they understood the importance of Maricopa County having its own taxing system for transportation to alleviate ADOT funds for the rest of them. So with that, I think it's good news, but the work lies ahead. First of all, those who are going to work on the election are going to have to do that outside of MAG. And then assuming a positive vote, there's going to be a lot of work to implement as we get towards 2026. So that is the majority, the extent of the legislative update for today. Thank you.
Thank you. That was pretty significant. And I think it's important also, critically important for us to recognize you and your staff and all the work they put in, all the way from developing the plan, right? I mean, that wasn't easy. We spent a lot of hard discussions just getting that plan together and making sure it was balanced across this entire region, getting the input from all communities and understanding their perspectives, and then having to deal with the challenge of getting it to the legislature. But we know you and your staff were down there and making sure that facts were driving discussions, not rumors, not anecdotal stories, but facts. And so I think we all look forward to getting the facts out about what is in the plan and the balance of the plan and how it will serve the region. So, but thanks to you and the MAG staff. I mean, there were days I think we weren't sure we were going to get here. So
yeah. Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Brady. I should have recognized all the MAG staff. The entire agency really pitched in. I do want to recognize John Bullen and Audra Kester Thomas, who are out there toiling.
Don was skipping down the hall.
Toiling in the vineyards. But I do also remember in 2018 when each city brought forward the list of what you needed.
Yeah.
You remember that 5 years ago, and we found it was too much. No surprise. There's more demand for transportation than we have available resources. And through the work of this agency, through the work of you all as a collaborative group, we came up with a plan that met your needs and it met your needs because you told us it met the needs of your residents. And that was validated by our elected officials. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There are very few plans that are out there that has all this input, right? This is remarkable. We can get there. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Item 9, request for future agenda items. Are there any requests by management committee members for an item on a future agenda? All right. Item 10, are there any comments or announcements from the membership? If not, the next meeting of the MAG Management Committee will be Wednesday, September 13th at 12 p.m. with no further business.